Let's all go to the electric circus. Did you know that in 1930 only 13% of the rural United States had electricity? In 1935, a government program was created called the Rural Electrification Administration, or the REA, that focused on helping farm communities get access to electricity. But in order for electricity access to be profitable to everyone, the families had to start using it in different ways. And what makes people use more electricity? Buying electric appliances. To get the rural United States excited about electricity, the REA launched huge events across the country like county fairs. These types of programs were the beginning of the massive advertising effort known as the electric circus. A main target audience of this effort was rural women. This presentation is about how women played a specific and impactful role in bringing electricity to their communities in the rural US. Today we're going to be making a classic recipe that uses diverse kitchen technologies from the time period, icebox lemon pie. This is essentially lemon meringue pie with ice cream. As we cook today, let's pay special attention to the ways electricity has revolutionized how we make this treat.
This specific recipe is a family heirloom from Della Mall, the grandmother of one of the researchers who created this presentation. Della grew up in rural North Carolina on a farm without electricity and became a home economics teacher. She originally found this recipe in Good Housekeeping's Women's magazine in the 1960s and still makes it every year for her son's birthday. Traditional women's roles in the mid-1900s were seen as being restricted to housework and homemaking. While women's individual lives could actually be a more complex picture, this was the model of life that dominated the public imagination. This meant that the burden of all the chores of daily life did indeed frequently fall mostly or entirely on women. Before electricity, this was an extremely time-consuming job. Everything had to be done by hand with no washing machine, no refrigerator, no electric mixers, or stoves. A homemaker's entire day could be consumed keeping her house according to the societal standards of the moment. The REA took advantage of the situation and made a concerted effort to reach out to white rural women to get them to adopt home appliances to free their time from the ever-present drudgery of housework. In turn, this increased free time allowed women to get jobs that they wanted and earn money which they could use to buy even more appliances. The women also shared REA's promotional information with their husbands to convince them to invest in new farm appliances. The REA's capacity to target women was made all the stronger by their employment of women home economists to execute their plan. Women were creating, organizing, and performing these programs and provided personal insight into the most powerful ways to reach the community.
This pie has a graham cracker crust. Graham crackers have been around since 1829 and were well known for the healthy, whole wheat graham flour that they were made with. It was a part of a larger health trend that believed that whole wheat flour and fresh foods were healthier than other options. This was a belief that the REA encouraged and used to its advantage. The electric circus advertised that electric appliances would help farmers cook with more fresh foods or even allow them to make their own whole wheat flour at home, which they claimed retained even more vitamins. This was a tactic that was also used more broadly. Since women were thought to be in charge of the family's health, the REA really pushed the health benefits associated with the purchase of electric appliances to make rural women feel like they were a necessity and not a luxury. Electric lights were especially advertised in this way. The marketing materials would imply that families were hurting their children's eyes if they didn't purchase them by making them strained to see in dim candlelight.
Now, these electric circus stops could be quite grand affairs. The Alabama Circuit in 1949, which was sponsored by some companies you would recognize today, like General Electric, Frigidaire, and Motorola, had 20 stops and attracted almost 100,000 people total, including over 12,000 at their largest event. There would also be local vendors, beauty pageants, and lots of demonstrations, kind of like the one we're doing right now. The REA hired women home economists who would set up a model kitchen with all the electric machinery and make different dishes to highlight how these appliances could make the process more efficient. Children could also be involved, and collaborations with community organizations and churches were frequent. The food available at the fair was cooked with electric methods, turning the event itself into an advertisement. The fairs weren't the only time kitchen demonstrations would be put on. The REA really wanted rural families to adopt electricity as a way of life, and a large part of how they accomplished that goal was how they worked with women and leveraged community networks to spread information about and encourage the use of new appliances. The REA home economists would do smaller-scale local demonstrations by going into people's homes and inviting the nearby ladies to attend. In addition, the home economists would teach classes to women and children about electric appliances and build relationships to try to get people to embrace electric machinery. The lack of rural electricity was a problem of economics and numbers, but the solution was accomplished by small-scale intrapersonal work. An important ingredient in this dessert is butter. It seems so easy to get now, but in the past, farm women had to make their own butter using a butter churn, which required hefting an enormous wooden rod up and down for several hours in order to turn milk into butter. There was also an intermediate hand-cranked butter churn that was easier to navigate than the large manual churn, but still demanded quite a lot of manual strength. Imagine what a drain of time and energy that was. That's why, when electricity started saving time on these house chores, women found themselves able to have time to work on other things, and to expand their role outside of the home. Some of them created their own businesses, some engaged more in the community, some worked on the farm, and some even found employment outside of the home. So while buying the electric appliances was a large investment for rural women, the REA emphasized how these machines were worth the extra cost and would eventually pay for themselves.
Before home freezers, this recipe likely would not have been possible. Some people used ice boxes to keep food fresh, which you had to refill with ice. The Iceman would come 3 times a week to deliver some fresh, and you still got food poisoning from time to time from spoiled food. So when the electric freezers arrived, life really changed. The increase in convenience was massive, not even to mention food safety. This added comfort was something that the REA knew to emphasize in their work. Ice cream was around back then, but most people would have had to head down to the corner store to buy it before they had an electric freezer. Having ice cream in the house was very rare. Children would get jealous of their friends who had it, kind of like with video games today.
Before electricity, we would be whipping up this meringue by hand, a very time-consuming process. But thanks to the REA, rural women were able to buy electric mixers, including the world-famous KitchenAid mixer that cooks everywhere drool over to this day. Another marketing device of the REA was the idea of modernity. The REA made sure that electric appliances were integrated into the style, fashion, and design of the era. Newspapers went wild when the First Lady, Eleanor Roosevelt, updated the White House kitchen with the latest and greatest electric cookware. Appliances were judged on their beauty as well as their efficiency, and the presence of electric appliances was said to give your home a more appealing look. Word of mouth was the most powerful way that women learned about electricity, and after one farm woman got her electric kitchen, soon enough, every woman in the town wanted one too. The REA recognized this fact and took advantage of it. Demonstrations often focused on how to make your kitchen more visually attractive. The narrative was, if you didn't have electricity, you were falling behind. You would be seen as old school rather than glamorous and a modern woman. Speaking of the image of a modern farm woman, it is important to note that the REA outreach efforts were biased and concentrated on white families and white communities. Much of the papers on the REA's efforts don't really explicitly say anything about race, and the photos of the electric circus centrate on images of white women and white men. This omission reveals how opportunities to increase productive power were limited to white people, something that caused long-lasting socioeconomic damage.
This recipe requires you to be able to balance cooking the meringue while not also melting all the ice cream. This too would have been much harder in the pre-electric wood-fired stoves, which required women to build and maintain a fire, then constantly monitor the oven and food by sight and feel to estimate the temperature and know when the dish was done. The more straightforward and exact electric stove made cooking easier to do well and thereby increased its accessibility, opening it up to people without years of experience. The REA used the argument that even men could use their appliances to show how much simpler they made life. They would even do a demonstration where 2 men would battle their skills out in a cooking duel. Men were not normally expected to have the capacity to be able to prepare meals by themselves. The spectacle of them on stage really showed how much easier the new electric stoves were to manage. In addition to being complicated, wood stoves are also extremely hot and posed a fire hazard within the home, so you had to keep children and flammable objects away. The REA knew that a significant concern of consumers at the time was product safety. In the ads for early electric appliances, there are many attempts to comfort the buyer by making it clear that the machines aren't dangerous and giving directions for how to minimize risk in using them.
It looks like our pie is finally finished. Great-grandma would have been proud. But thankfully for us, we had a lot of help that she didn't. From our electric freezer, range, mixer, and oven. And hopefully our demonstration today has helped show more about how these items came to be in almost every kitchen in the United States today. Because they did not just appear out of nowhere. From 1930 to 1960, the percentage of rural households with electricity grew from 13% to over 90%. The REA Electric Circus was an enormous and carefully targeted campaign to have electricity reach every corner of our country, and they leveraged a very traditional image of women's role as the sole homemaker in order to target their advertising. Still, thanks to the REA, the rural way of life, and especially women's lives, were revolutionized. Due in part to these efforts, almost every home in the country has learned to cook the electric way.